They read him, they tortured him, him, then they killed him. Shannon Christian and Christopher Nome had their whole lives ahead of them, until the night of January 6, 2007. What began as a simple carjacking quickly escalated into something so depraved we don't find the words for it. The depths of human cruelty knows no bounds, as this case tragically shows. It takes a special kind of evil to not only steal an innocent life, but to do so in such a prolonged, merciless manner, inflicting unimaginable suffering, and for what the senseless motive behind. This brutality only adds to the heartbreak. Shannon and Christopher's story is one that will haunt Knoxville for generations, a painful reminder of the monsters that can lurk in our midst, but it is also a testament to the power of love, justice, and resilience in the face of unfathomable loss. Shannon was just 21, Chris only 23. They were the couple that everyone low-key envied, the kind of love you dream of finding someday. They'd only met a few months ago, but they already knew that this was something real, something different, and they had no doubts that they would make this relationship work long-term too. They were made for each other. Shannon was crushing her senior year at the University of Tennessee, studying sociology and ready to change the world. She was a typical girl. I mean, she wasn't perfect. Nobody's perfect, but she never gave us any trouble, always did well in school. She was beautiful, but what made her even more beautiful was the fact that she was not stuck on herself. Chris was that loyal friend and gifted carpenter everyone in Knoxville knew and loved. He was hardworking and kind beyond his immediate family. Everyone who knew him remembered how he always gave it his all to put a smile on everyone's faces. Anybody that knew Chris was his friend, and he had a smile that everybody just loved. Chris was an excellent baseball player, good boy, good kid, worked hard. You had a lot of skills, could have went on and played further if he had chose to. January 6, 2007 was supposed to be a night of good food and celebrating with friends. 12:35. The phone rang that night, and he spoke to her on the phone. She called to check in to let us know that she was coming home rather than staying at Cares that night. Chris scooped Shannon from her girl's apartment, and when she's in the passenger seat, they shared that kind of hug that gives you butterflies, all passion and promise. That pure moment, a snapshot of young love, was the last flicker of light in their short lives. I sat up, and she never came home. They had no clue a crew of armed monsters was clocking Shannon's forerunner, plotting on carjacking top fueled their drug hustle. The group was led by Lamarcus Davidson, fresh out of prison for jacking cars. Davidson, his pal Level Cobbins, and their boys George Thomas and Eric Boyd rolled up on the couple at gunpoint, forcing them into the back seat, tied up and terrified beyond words. Shannon and Chris were dragged to Davidson's rental on Chipman Street. The nightmare was just beginning. I can't even put into words the hell Shannon and Chris went through in the next 24 hours, tortured bad and worse by Dave Idson, Cobbins, Thomas Boyd, and even Davidson girlfriend Vanessa Coleman. Monsters, all of them. Chris was bound, gagged, violated, and led barefoot to the railroad tracks, shot over and over. One final bullet to the head, execution-style gasoline poured on his broken body before the match hit. Meanwhile, back at that house of horrors, Shannon was going through even more prolonged, brutal violence. We're talking vicious, with objects, caustic chemicals dumped on her ravaged body. They like him, him, then they killed him. It's not a normal murder somehow. Through impossible strength, she clung to life for over 24 hours of non-stop torture. But in the end, they hog-tied her, stuffed her in multiple trash bags, and tossed her in a garbage bin to suffocate. Layers of plastic away from fresh air and any shot at survival. Shannon died a slow death, grasping for air and struggling to comprehend what just happened and why. It's an unimaginably painful thought that someone could die like this young couple did, in physical and emotional torment, unable to understand why a complete stranger would do this to them when Shannon and Chris were not. Shows at the birthday party Saturday night, and still radio silent. On Sunday their families knew in their guts. Something was very wrong. We had not seen him since Saturday night. Which that's not unusual. He was 23 years old, and he kind of came and went with not a whole lot of restrictions at that age. And the way we discovered he was missing was Shannon's mother Dana called and said that Shannon didn't show up for work. This couple was never the type to cancel plans or leave their people hanging, and stressing Shannon's mom called the police that Sunday to report her girl missing. Sadly, because Shannon was over 18, she got hit with that all too typical line, got to wait 48 hours before reporting her. But these families weren't about to just sit around twiddling their thumbs. They got together and decided to conduct the search themselves if the police weren't going to help. They rang up the couple's friends and combed every block in Knoxville, all the while ringing Chris and Shannon over and over again. There was no answer. Though finally, Shannon Cell Company came through with a lead, a ping off a tower on Cherry Street, a sketchy neighborhood, miles from where they were last seen around 2 a.m. Monday, the search crew found Shannon's car abandoned, but the couple was nowhere in sight. The 4Runner was picked clean of anything tying it to Shannon Sticker's personal belongings. Everything was gone, and the front seats were shoved way back. No way Shannon's petite self could have been behind the wheel. A pack of smokes was in the console, but Shannon and Chris never smoked. The scene was as suspicious as it gets. However, that very day, somebody planned to find a considerably more vile scene. On Monday, a railroad specialist staggered on Chris's burned remaining parts. Those piercing blue eyes, even through the blazes, affirmed it was him. The family's most profound feelings of trepidation worked out. Expected Chris was long gone, and Shannon was still out there missing. Yet, before Shannon was found, the scientific group needed to break it to Chris's family. He had passed on, shouting for quite a long time, getting through things that I couldn't completely portray here. Analyst Snodderly says it's Chris, and we asked, well, how would you know? And he says, I remembered him by his eyes. Everything self-destructed. At that point, each of his companions strolled in there. Probably been 15 or 20 of them, come in all simultaneously. And that just gave me such a frightful inclination. See you it. Thought, for what reason isn't Chris with them? And it truly put chills through me. I thought, here's the entirety of his companions, and he's not here. And it was quite possibly of the hardest second. Proof from Shannon's vehicle in the end drove the police right to a explicit spot that reviled Shipman Roadhouse in Tuesday. A specialized squad burst in with a court order. It was the stuff of bad dreams. A greater amount of the couple's stuff was dissipated all over, yet it wasn't their assets that terrified the officials at the scene. There was a picture that will torment them perpetually. Shannon's body packed in a kitchen gar, her eyes once shimmering, with life frozen open, illustrating the damnation that she went through. She battled through unfathomable torment, want and experiencing just to disappear, slow choking in a plastic casket. Do you have any idea how fast to Shannon and Chris that CH vehicle jacking went down? Blast, you descend your steps and you go get in the vehicle, and you are turning your vehicle, and your sweetheart gets inside the entryway. They're rolling to get him. A little sugar blast. There's a firearm toward the rear of your head, and some enormous sucker gets in your Trailblazer and puts a weapon on you. Very much appreciate that it's done. Sailors and fingerprints attached 5 suspects to this bad drop. Ian Lamarcus Davidson, Letton Alice Cobbins, George Thomas, Eric Boyd, and Vanessa Coleman. Davidson and Boyd were captured inside the space of hours, while the other 3, Thomas, Cobbins, and Coleman, got captured not long after, in something like 7 days of the misfortune. The analysts set up the story. Davidson was the brains in taking Shannon's vehicle for his medication. Game was the thought process. Yet, how does a jacking transform into long stretches of torment and wanton homicide? That is a why that is never completely been replied from all points. None of these beasts had any earlier hamburger with Shannon or Chris Simply a youthful couple, wrong spot, most terrible time. Possible two promising lives snuffed out by unadulterated shrewd, and the silly brutality of outsiders. When news spread about what went down with Shannon and Chris, the entire city of Knoxville was severely impacted. People couldn't truly make sense of the way that this bad dream leaped off blocks or roads from where they lay their heads around evening time. It was a hard slap of reality, the terrible acknowledgement that this sort of more bizarre risk was sneaking directly in front of them the entire time. The deception of security in their own local area was directly broken. I figure many individuals don't completely accept that things like that can occur here to them. And when they understand that there's beasts among us, they're coming in here, they need some insurance. They need to understand how to hold that back from happening to them or their children. Whenever we get an opportunity, we haven't gotten the opportunity, yet we will proceed to get firearm allows and convey a firearm likewise. I simply feel like you realize you truly need one now for security, and particularly assuming that there's a home attack or something, you truly should have the option to safeguard yourself. Now we began a class only for ladies called Ladies on Track, and it's full pretty much consistently. The vast majority of individuals that I know have a vehicle grant, yet they didn't used to. They didn't then. Now this case was stunning according to many perspectives. This was not the standard unimportant wrongdoing you catch wind of in occupied towns. This case is remarkable for various reasons. It is surprising to have two casualties. It is uncommon to have a more odd wrongdoing. You, as in the people in question, and the litigants didn't have the foggiest idea each other. The degree of brutality isn't as strange, yet a piece surprising you for the time frame that viciousness was completed. It's uncommon by the way it's grasped the local area's consideration. And I consider part that is on the grounds that you have two children who are from genuinely wealthy families, who are not doing anything wrong. Individuals see this case, and they feel that could be me, or that could be my children, and thus it contacts individuals in that manner. The what uncertainties, and if by some stroke of good luck is hit hard, to consider the possibility that somebody had peeped a carjacking going down and step key in. Imagine a scenario in which people in the space had timed dubious movement at that Chipman Road cushion and raised the caution. We were 2 blocks from where she was, assuming they had quite recently thumped on the entryway, strolled the roads. We don't say whether we might have saved her life, yet she could not have possibly stayed there for 2 days in a garbage bin. The entire local area was trapped in a circle, playing out situations where perhaps quite possibly the settled weighty on the city spirit. Knoxville was left considering the way in which they'd let 2 of their own down so damn terrible, and how they'd protect their other individuals from the beasts strolling among them. I'm more careful about what I do and where I go, and my environmental factors. I'm extremely terrified of going out someplace that I'm not mindful of where I am. Since it happened, you realize you generally became L wherever you go in any case, so you realize you became L about individuals you meet and stuff that you do. I have a girl and I wouldn't need any. Because of that entire situation, I'm determining the status of her consistently. The suspects attempted to refuse to accept responsibility for the issues at hand, behaving like their hands were scarcely grimy, yet the receipts don't lie. There was such a lot of DNA proof at the scene, it was practically entertaining. These individuals had a go at saying they weren't there. It demonstrates what sorts of individuals they are. However, the sort that right after their capture had a go at faulting others and rejected making any obligation for their savage moves. When the criminal investigators dug through their past, they found that every one of them, 5, had been in and out of the prison framework, continuously opposing specialists and hurting others for their own pleasure. They've generally had an existence of wrongdoing. They were consistently unsteady, and they were dependably into something. 2009 and 2010 saw Davidson Cobbins, Thomas and Coleman sentenced in discrete preliminaries. Davidson got capital punishment. Cobbins and Thomas were condemned to life in jail, without any chance to appeal. I truly do accept solidly and appall tion of individuals that I run alongside that, when you practice a ton of misleading, and when you, the law remained firm, this was a wrongdoing of chance, not disdain. I have heard that there's been a few certain individuals that have discussed how, you realize it was a racially propelled wrongdoing. And I feel that it's a terrible belief is that simply makes more prejudice and bigotry. And I surmise a hardship between locally soon, this lamentable story turned into a political clash, with individuals guaranteeing the media inclusion was slanted for the dark suspects. I don't completely accept that it affected the African American people group overall. In light of the fact that the African American people group isn't liable for the demonstrations of a couple you people who went past the limits of human respectability, still the public spotlight and shock was on the savage fierceness of the violations, not the skin shade of who did what. I don't think it had a say in race. I think it was simply that is who they saw, and they pursued him. For the families, the unfathomable desolation of losing Shannon and Chris in such a manner won't ever disappear. That aggravation doesn't blur with time or seeing individuals get secured at Coleman's parole hearing in 2020. Shannon's dad said somebody a long while back said something that time recuperates all injuries. I'm here to affirm today that assertion is misleading. For the individual that offered that expression initially never covered a kid. Their mothers can't resist the memorable urge. Again and again, the way in which these two were youthful, kind, mindful, and in affection, they were both just so brimming with life, love, and commitment. They didn't merit an ounce of this to keep Shannon and Chris's memory alive. Their families set up grant reserves and a yearly commemoration golf competition. The Chipman Road place of revulsions was supplanted with a commemoration for Shannon and Chris. The families, however, through unfathomable pain, have been up front at each parole hearing and trial, ensuring their children, executioners, stay secured, and the emphasis stays on the two wonderful lives that were grabbed away. Shannon and Chris' story. It's an unbelievable misfortune. But on the other hand, a demonstration of an affection perseveres despite the fact that their time together was stopped. Pepped in the most over-the-top, horrendous manner, they stuffed more love, chuckling, and realness into their fleeting sentiment than certain people do in a lifetime, as Shannon's mother Dana put it. We embrace them, we kiss them, and we let them know we cherish them. We were lucky we did that, since it was the final time we'd at any point get to do it. Many years the Knoxville people group meets up to keep Shannon and Chris' memory alive. They hold vigils where they light candles, share stories, and rest on one another for strength. It's a custom of adoration and recognition, a method for maintaining the shine on the light Shannon and Chris brought into the world, rather than the haziness that removed them from it. These social occasions are something beyond a recognition. However, they're a revitalizing cry, a strong update that in this peculiar, capricious world, we've all got to have each other's backs. The message is clear: post for your neighbors, your companions, even the outsiders on the road. I have done nothing like this before. Everyone has somebody in their family that bites the dust, yet they don't pass on like these families. Kids was the assister. Once somebody could require the lifesaver, they're frantically expecting in our current reality, where evil can prowl around any corner. These vigils are an encouraging sign, a commitment that together we can pick love over torment and light over haziness. My heart only felt for them. We don't have the foggiest idea what it resembles, what they're going through, and anything that we can do. Shannon and Chris' heritage lives on through this strong obligation of local area, an affection that will constantly eclipse the disdain. We have an entire bundle of cards from individuals that don't know us, that simply need to say something, and need to say something. You realize that they're appealing to God for ourselves. And there's been a huge amount of help that we truly feel a debt of gratitude truly assists us with getting past. May the memory of Shannon and Chris live on, not for how they were taken out, but rather for the manner in which they lived hearts completely open, fates, brilliant and distraught love. To offer, we can respect them by holding our kin additional nearby and paying special attention to one another in this insane world. Eventually, as Shannon's father said, we've seen the most terrible of the most terrible, yet we've likewise seen the best. I'd sit in that seat, and she would come, I bet, multiple times and slide directly over the arm of that seat, and sat in my lap, put her arm around me and take a gander at me. A certain way Daddy and I would get this feeling that would come over me, like this will cost me, in the event that I plonk down in that seat and shut my eyes. I can feel her make it happen, and it sure feels great. We can't bring her back. Generally make sure to let your kids know that you love them, your family, that you love you, since no one can really tell while it will be the last time that you get to say those words. I was sufficiently appreciative to tell her that I cherished her the day she left, and her daddy got to tell her he adored her that evening. He conversed with her, since that was one thing that we generally did. We let our children in on the amount we love them, and to be cautious, you simply never know when it's the last time. May Shannon and Chris's affection perpetually help us to remember the positive qualities in this world, the sort of good that no detestable can at any point put out. Low gratitude for watching this is a truly unfortunate case. Leave a smart remark and let me in on how you protect your friends and family in this peculiar world. Stay safe and ensure you like and buy in before you go. See you soon, definitely.